What up, everybody? Welcome to the RevOps Summer School with HubSpot and RevPartners. I am pumped to be here. Let us continue and get started. We got lots of learning to do. So, this is a 3-day event. In this 3-day event, we will be covering a lot. We're going to start super theoretical. It's so important that we actually do this theoretical portion because it gives us the framework where we can start talking a common language and being able to build into our CRM instance, in this case, HubSpot. So from the top to the bottom, today's class and day one is about RevOps, which is the science of revenue growth. And also we'll be talking about the business model. At the end, we'll have exercise 1 that will turn in and go into day 2. Through these courses, you'll see that there is the business model, go-to-market model, data model, growth model, math model, tool stack, RevOps pyramid, plus the fundamentals. Like a lot of this is built upon a specific framework with the intent of making it repeatable for B2B, for any B2B company, where you can start executing revenue operations and creating revenue growth for you. So you see it, we're at day 1. Let us get started. Class 1, which is what we're on today. Go to class 2. So class 1, basics. We're doing what is the definition actually of revenue operations? What's the reason for the rise? And what are some common revenue RevOps methodologies and perhaps a framework from which we can execute all things just a tad bit better? For class 2, we'll be starting along in that framework where we'll do the B2B business model, which is the first portion, and then going over the effects of the business model on RevOps variables and how things we need to consider as we start to build out our think about what revenue operations is and how to build it. So let us go. Number 1, I love teaching and talking and dreaming about revenue operations. It is my favorite subject in the world to talk about, except my wife and my little boy right now. Besides that, this is a favorite topic I think about. Prior to starting this, we did a full series called Becoming the HubSpot RevOps Professional that talks about how do I become a revenue operations professional that specializes in HubSpot. So we have done those 3-part episode where we create a methodology for 5 steps to go over. I highly recommend if you're like, hey, how do I become a HubSpot? Stop now, go to that session. Those sessions are amazing. Start with number 1, and you can go all the way through. We talk to a recruiter, and then we talk to an actual RevOps practitioner that talk about the lessons learned. Then we talk about hiring and implementing revenue operations. So we have the growth through design, how to implement and not have prevent your CRM implementation from failing, how to actually implement, how to hire RevOps Jedi, like our process internal to RevPartners to go through it. Our inbound talk about the money ball, and that which is a common analogy for RevOps. That's useful. We'll talk about a little bit more today. And a RevOps manifesto. So what are 10 top tips when you're thinking about revenue operations and how to execute it? There will be more. So this is the start of the RevOps Summer School. It's 3-day courses we talked about, and I'm super excited. But it becomes, why the heck are we here today? We have all these other ones. Where does this fit within it? And this fits within my goal is, and my mission, and the mission of RevPartners is to democratize revenue operations. And that goes with teaching, that goes with delivering services, that goes with creating products, but it's about having more people understand what the heck revenue operations is and be able to execute it more tenaciously and more ferociously inside the revenue stack. That's why I'm here. That's why I will continue to be here to the best of my ability. Why this course? We're missing frameworks. I believe very strongly at this point. We do not have a common framework that RevOps professionals can work from. We don't have a common language. We don't have a common framework. And we don't have a way that is repeatable from stack to stack. And what is out there as we go, it's too heady and too theoretical. We're going to get really theoretical in this course, but it all has a specific purpose that fits within a framework that allows us to execute. It's not just theory for theory. We don't have a way in our current, what the guides that exist, a way to make decisions. There's not a way to connect strategy, like what's your business model, go-to-market strategy, data model, and then math model, and then connect it with tactics that specifically in a CRM that tells you how to do better. So like, how do you do, when should you parent-child relationships? And when is that important? What go-to-market strategies do align with? We don't have a way to prioritize what's important, what's not important. We don't have a common language to communicate value. So it's like when someone asks us, what is revenue operations? Or say you are a revenue operations professional and your wife or someone you like, one of your loved ones says, what do you do for a living? You probably look at them with a blank face because they can't communicate it. We don't have a common language to communicate value. And that means we don't have a way to upskill as rev operations pros. I get asked almost daily in LinkedIn. It says, Matt, I want to become a RevOps pro. How do I do it? And then take this one step farther is you take these frameworks and it's not any of the frameworks that exist are not tailored to a specific CRM. And the fact is the CRM you use has specific intricacies and they exist in an ecosystem and they're all different. And you need to know there should be a different way to apply these strategies to Salesforce, a different one to apply to HubSpot. So that's what we're going to cover today. In this course, we're going to start getting a framework for us to all use together and also begin applying that in HubSpot on day 3. So this is the agenda for today. Really simple questions we're asking. But at the end, I think we have some clarity around what the heck revenue operations really is. Why were you saying the word? Why are we saying the word all the time? And then another RevOps framework. Let's start talking about why I'm saying it that way and making fun of it. So number 1, what is RevOps? Man, if you're like me, so before we go, I just want to say this is to make this relative. I think it's important that and that we say is answer this question and truthfully answer this question. What were businesses doing before revenue operations? What I mean what were businesses doing is we have not been talking about revenue operations until the last 3 to 4 years. So what were companies doing prior? They were siloed. They didn't have alignments and teams. KPIs were wrong. How are they like? And I'm making fun of this for a second, but what did Coca-Cola do? What did Delta Airlines or any of the airlines do? What did UPS or FedEx do? What did Lowe's or Home Depot or Cox Enterprises or Johnson & Johnson or any of these other large multi-billion, multinational companies, what were they doing before revenue operations? You know what they were doing? They were running profitable billion-dollar companies. That's what they were doing. They were doing. So we talk about what is RevOps. Is guys and gals, people have been doing RevOps for a long time, decades, centuries, years. Sometimes some of these companies are 100 years old. So as we talk about revenue operations, I think it's important to know this is not something that's new. We just have a new vernacular to express it. And we'll talk about here in a bit why there's the rise and why it's now top of mind and a changing and who's starting to influence the decisions and how decisions are being influenced. So if you're like me, anytime anybody asks me anything I don't know about, I don't call a friend. Well, you could say I call a friend. I call my BFF, Mr. Google, and I send what is RevOps, and you'll get something like this. First, number 1, I want you to notice is that there are people paying lots of money to rank number 1 to come up when you do keyword terms. So they have a keyword term or long tail questions about what is RevOps, and they're trying to rank number 1. I want you to notice a lot of them are all SaaS companies. And if you look at the people who are ranking number 1, they're SaaS companies or companies that promote SaaS companies rating wise. You have Clary and Salesforce and Cognizant. And I just want to be if you click these, you're going to get some definitions. And that is all people trying to either be number 1 or ranking. And I want you to see this as we go through, because these are probably definitions that we align with, right? They're going to use words like alignment, about not being siloed, about being on the same page. So let's look at them. RevOps aligns marketing, sales, and customer service, the customer lifecycle to drive revenue. Yeah. RevOps is a mindset. It's a practice and it's a manifestation of unifying your internal operations. Okay. It aligns marketing, sales, operations. It's a business function that uses automation to help businesses make decisions. It's a business function that aims to maximize organizations' revenue potential. It's an approach designed to integrate departments. It's about breaking down silos between these different departments and identifying the most vital strategies. It's alignment of sales and marketing. It's a strategic alignment. It's enabling organizations to break down silos. Come on. Like, why? You may hear these and they may resonate with you because some of these they're talking about are pain points. But, and I don't like to use BUT often, right? But should be always reserved in private, not for public places or in presentations. But revenue operations or any word should not be defined by its end state. What this is defining is when revenue operations is done well. That is not the definition of the word. Think about it. Do we define football by, hey, in American football is the definition of football is when someone scores a touchdown? No, we don't define soccer by the definition of soccer is when someone scores a goal. We don't define baseball by when somebody scores a run. No, there's so much more complicated than that. This, just want to be very frank, is these are what happens when SEO, and some people say marketing ruins everything. This is when SEO becomes king, and the word RevOps becomes very important. Is we get searches in Google, which is where we all go, or at least I go, and you get regurgitated gobbledygook. It's really hard to find a good guide or a useful guide that's going to let you implement and teach you how to implement revenue operations on the internet that's ranked in the top 4 or 5 pages. It just is because everybody's vying for it. And I just make this point, like, this is hard. So where do you go? How do you learn revenue operations? How do you define it? What is revenue operations? Let's start with some stuff. And we've been some of these points have been making. So number 1, revenue operations is not new. It's not new. It's not alignment. No, revenue operations is not alignment. It's not a methodology. It's not a methodology. It's not a mindset or way of thinking. And it's not something a company or person can start or stop. You can't start or stop. You are doing revenue operations by just having a company that's attempting to create revenue. So let's read this. The definition is extremely important because it defines how we think about, how we train, how we iterate, how we build frameworks around it. So let's go into, before we get into it, I just want to do an example. And I talked about Moneyball earlier. Let's bring this home. So Moneyball, the idea is using sabermetrics or using the study of the analytics of baseball, to be specific. It is the empirical analysis of baseball at the team and individual level. And sabernomics is the study of baseball. And it allows people to replicate and repeat winning seasons. And so the hypothesis is if we study and we apply statistical analysis and data analysis, we collect, we synthesize, and we disseminate, we can replicate and repeat winning seasons, that we can apply a process where we can teach, measure, repeat, improve, explain, and apply growth strategies to win more baseball games. And last is that we can collect, synthesize, and disseminate baseball data through tools and behaviors. Sabermetrics was created, and it's very famous for the Oakland A's, where they had a data analyst that came and they used data to make a hodgepodge of teammates based on stats, and they outperformed. They wildly outperformed based on the amount of money they spent. This is the best analogy for what revenue operations is. It is applying Moneyball to revenue. So as you think about this, is what is RevOps then? RevOps is, you could say, the empirical analysis, but it's a science, it's a study of sustainable revenue growth. How do I replicate and repeat revenue growth? How can I repeat it no matter what B2B company I'm at? What's the process where I can teach revenue teams, measure, repeat, improve, and explain and apply growth strategies to the full revenue cycle, regardless of where I'm at? And what are the tools and behaviors? How am I collecting, synthesizing, disseminating revenue data in a way that allows me to win more games or win more revenue? This is revenue operations. It has very little to do with alignment, except that it creates alignment because you're studying it, and there are going to be best practices, not just best practices, they're frameworks in which you live in that will, as a result of doing it well, or create alignment. But this is the definition. And this is so powerful. So we have moved from gobbledygook to a specific way that can allow us to start thinking about frameworks. And it has a hypothesis, and the study of RevOps is submitted in this key hypothesis that we can create a framework where we can replicate and repeat. We can create a process. We have tools and behaviors. That's the definition, and that's what we're like. We can communicate that. So when somebody says, "Hey, you do revenue operations for a living?" What does that even mean? You say, "Hey, I'm a student of revenue data, and I help companies win more revenue through studying, through applying statistical analysis, where I can help them replicate and repeat revenue growth." That's what revenue operations is at the fundamental level. So let's talk about how it came to be. So first off, there's a promise of it, and you can't see it bottom left. And there's a myriad of these studies that come out that say revenue operations makes you more awesome. And they say it with stats. And we throw these around. I mean, Serious Decisions has them, Forrester has them, Gartner has them, the Lane Data has them. They all have them. It increases profitability by 15%. It increases speed of growth by 19%. It is 15% in sales productivity. It is 71% increase in stock performance and 100% increase to 200% increase in digital marketing ROI. RevOps is so awesome. That's a big promise. These are big promises. But as you mentioned, is we don't have a clear definition in the marketplace today. And there's no framework in which to talk about these. So we have this big promise, and now just as a point, and we know we need this thing. We don't really know how to do it. But let's talk about this big promise, and these big numbers have made it more popular. And this big promise has been caused by lots of factors that we're going to investigate more, so a better understanding. So, but before we get into it, let's just further validate that this is actually a word that has risen in popularity and has not always been. Let's look at our website. This is me going on the internet, going to Google search trends, looking up RevOps. And you look from 2004, which is as early as you can go, to present is ain't nobody talking about revenue operations 2004. I don't know what happened in 2011 where people were talking about revenue operations, maybe a recession, because guess what? Revenue operations is a really good way to get through recessions. And because you're talking about efficiency. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And then, but as we go to 2020 and 2020 and 2022, there's just been this catch fire, like where revenue operations is top of mind. It is in the boardrooms of every PE, VC, and portfolio company. It is everywhere, and that it's starting to reflect. You'll see the time period, but it's starting to reflect in like what people want to be called, and it is a recognition that there needs to be a focus more than just on the left side of the bow tie funnel, which we'll get into in class 2 later today. But it's all, and it's both in like profitability, especially with subscription models, which is where we're going as a society. Subscription-based models for most businesses requires a look at not just the selling motion of close won contracts, but also the revenue that happens post customer, because that is where profitability occurs, and renewals, cross sells, and upsells. And so you'll see VP of sales ops, not VP of revenue operations, and not chief sales officer, chief revenue officer, because they have more to think about. So what's the cause of all this? Well, let's put it all together. Number one, we don't talk about this often, but it's the internet. Right? There is more broadband access, and that broadband access has allowed different technologies and consumption patterns that have affected how consumers are digesting information, gathering information, and where they're going watering hole to learn. It's why we're able to do remote work, and why we even have the possibility. While COVID may have been a catalyst for more remote work, it was only because we have the infrastructure to support it. And that has changed buying patterns completely, which leads us to, we have lost control of the buyer journey as companies. We can't, and it's almost impossible to understand where the buyer is in their journey. And we can't, it's not as easy as, download ebook. They're an MQL now. I mean, there's dark funnels. There is non-attributable marketing activity where people are listening to a podcast for 2 years before they reach out to you to come work. And they have self-educated themselves. I think it's about 71% of the buyer journey is done without anybody reaching out to an individual. So we're self-educating ourselves prior to going out and buying something, or we're going to a community, a small community, exclusive community where we can't do attribution. So it's just a different world that we live in, and it has caused a different world. And as we think about we've become more digital, there's also this two-pronged is we have democratized data, and there is just way more of it. Every email that we do is a data point. Every phone call that we make is a data point. And now there are tens of 20 of thousands of applications. This is 22 market. I can't see the dots, guys and girls. There's too many dots. Like there is just a profound proliferation, arms race, if you would, of how many marketing. This is just marketing, but sales, marketing, CS, data ops, tools, finance, FinOps now, that tools that are out in the marketplace that are capturing people's data, creating just a massive amount of data. And it almost you need a literacy to put that data together and be able to understand what the heck's happening. Not to mention is this change as business is becoming more complicated. We're moving from a this perpetual ownership type, make big purchase, keep, to I will have a subscription based model, even to a consumption based, where we have to understand intricately the full funnel in a different way. And it's just business is more difficult to do. There is more data, and we don't know how to understand it, synthesize it, or see it. And that is one of the promises of RevOps. Now here's a cause that we don't often talk about, and that is this, guys. So we talk about internet has transformed how we do. There's more data. There's this promise of becoming more efficient, business is more complicated, and then SaaS companies are coming in saying, hey, we'll help you solve this complication and be able to deliver and execute on revenue operations for you. And SaaS needs people to sell to. They need people to own the revenue stack. They need people to own and have budget for buying their product. I think this is funny. I think it's a great illustration. If you type in RevOps structure inside of Google, you'll find every single one of these charts is done by whom? A SaaS company. Why? Is because they need you to create a RevOps department so they can sell into it, so that they have someone to sell and have budget for. And so part of the this term rising popularity is true. It is needed more. This discipline and study of having scientists that understand the revenue journey is more needed than ever. But also SaaS companies need them more than ever because they are selling tools into them. So they're writing guides and they are owning SEO, and they're telling you need to become revenue operations, and you need to structure your teams in a very specific way. Look, structuring your team is only 5% of the journey. What matters a whole lot more is how you actually have a framework, which we don't really have today, about implementing. And we spend all our time talking about structure because SaaS companies are telling us to. Anyway, just a point as we go on that. So what's the framework? What are we talking about here? Give me a path. How do I actually do revenue operations? We talk about what it is. We talk about why it's here, but how do you do it? I want to make a point. Earlier in 2022 with HubSpot, we came up with a 5 stages of a HubSpot super admin. And they're saying it's a combination of both RevOps Professional and a HubSpot Power User. And you'll see in the RevOps Professional is a couple of these things are called build go-to-market forecast model. It's just, if you want to run revenue operations and have an impact and have control over that formula and influence decisions and budgets, it mandates that you as a professional can get and forecast and how to build out a go-to-market. And that means creating the TAM, that means creating the personas, that means creating the messaging, that means getting on an Excel document and being able to say, what am I hiring sales? What am I hiring marketing? How much budget do I need? The whole 9 yards. And so a little bit of what we're talking about today is we're giving a framework for revenue operations, a crash course on how to take strategic talking to executives and be able to translate that into tactical portions in the CRM so that we can answer more questions and thus be able to affect the success or failure of companies in a more repeatable fashion. I would say this is holistic, and just as a point, this is much needed, along with reading a P&L. You need to know what account receivables are. You need to know what account payables are. You need to know what bookings and billings and revenue, and you need to have these metrics understand. understand them. Account receivables, account AR, account payables, AP, just the points. Okay, so moving past here, just know there's a full session on how to get better at this and how to think through it. I recommend you watch it. So how do I apply? Well, and I think this is funny. So I've read 40, honestly, more than 40 RevOps guides in preparation for creating this class. And I found several different methodologies. And I don't know if it's the pillar problem of RevOps. Let me show you. So we have the three pillars of RevOps: people, platform, and process. We have the four pillars, which we've added insight to this. Really, we have the five areas instead of pillars, using another word, of revenue operations, and we have the six pillars. Goodness gracious! My point with all of this is these pillars methodologies are really useful for us to think about revenue operations and be able to define it theoretically, but they're not very good about making it tactical about exactly in the order you need to do to actually create revenue operations. So today I'm going to submit a new framework, one that is highly influenced. And if you haven't watched this, by Winning by Design, Jocko is the godfather of revenue operations in my mind. He doesn't even know it. He is brilliant. And has fought, and in many ways we stand on the shoulders of giants as we go through a framework. So we go through a framework that allows us to systematically begin to create a repeatable process for RevOps. So let's talk about that more. Before we go to that, I think it's important to note, because you see these a lot of places in these guides, these pillars, is they'll give best practices and rules of thumb. And without understanding the go-to-market motion or the business model or the data model that you're working in, these best practices are destructive. They can destroy your CRM. I have been a culprit of making these recommendations. Let me give you an example. Auto create renewal deals. It's not inherently bad, but when do you create it? What does renewal deals mean? What are you capturing? What's triggering this? Is it affecting a life cycle post customer? Depending on your go-to-market and your sales, like, do you need renewals or upsells? Who owns those? Who are you assigning them to? The best practice itself is not bad. However, applying it to your specific instance and having a way to eat that and put it into a specific practical guidance is difficult. So the best practice is not good. Let's take another one. 3x pipeline coverage. This comes from perpetual ownership, meaning I need a 3x because I have a 1 to 3 win ratio, or 33%. So I need a pipeline coverage of 3x. But what does that really mean? And is that true? Do I really need that if I have a sales cycle of 14 days? So do I need a pipeline that's 3x for every 14 days of my? There's just, the point being is these best practices, like, who aren't always true. You need to understand your business model, your go-to-market strategy for sales, marketing, your sales, marketing, and CS, your data model, your math model, and your growth model. And they have to all fit together to make you execute tenaciously. So I'm going to get past this. You see it. Just be careful. Okay. So if RevOps is the science of sustainable revenue growth that enables us to measure, repeat, improve, explain, apply, how do I do it? Let's start here. If the framework means there's ingredients, meaning there's specific ingredients that are there every single time and it tastes bad if you don't have them. It means there's a specific order that if you don't cook it in the same way, you're going to get a result you don't like. It's repeatable, meaning you can have a recipe, and it's a common language so that we can all talk the same way from one revenue operations together. We have that. Here are the ingredients. We'll be going over this. Let me move my face for a second. So that is, during this class, we'll go over all these. What is your business model? What is your go-to-market model, which there's a different one for sales, marketing, and CS based on your business model? What is the data model, which should reflect your go-to-market? What's the math model, so you understand where you're having exponential and compound impact, thus being able to prioritize? Where are you at within your growth model, product market fit or go-to-market fit? And where does revenue operations really kick in from 1 million AAR to 10 million AAR, and when you scale and when you get your Series B, etc. Tech stack. What technology do you need, and what order do you get them in, and then how are you thinking through that? And then even starting going specific into your instance, it's like, how are you doing sales processes and customer life cycles? which is probably the most important. So we think about that. Let's go through the order. So order number one, we're going to ID the business model. That is class 2 right after this. We're going to talk about the business model. Number 3, ID your go-to-market based on your business model. We're going to talk about that. And day 2, that's class 3. ID the data model. Then we're going to select the tool stack, configure the CRM and map based on what you need to collect. Synthesize, ID your exponential and compound levers, then prioritize and iterate and start to affect marginal change inside your inside the RevOps data model, which will have outsized impact or RevOps lift. Okay, final thing I want to leave is this. Who owns RevOps? Who does that RevOps? The owner of revenue operations is the owner of the forecasting model, meaning whoever's saying, here's what revenue we're hitting, and based on this revenue, here's who we're hiring, here's when we're hiring them, and here's how we're going to hit it, here's the money we're spending. That is the person doing revenue operations. And so a revenue operations role in and of itself is supportive, where we help influence those decisions. So let's take baseball, for example. The director of analytics or sabermetrics is not the GM of the business. However, their role is to help that GM make informed decisions about who they're going to put on the team and who is going, who they're going to buy, what type of training they need to do. They are helping them inform those decisions. So as a point, it is title independent. There may be you don't have to have revenue operations in your name to be doing revenue operations. It very well may be the CFO, the founder, the CEO, the VP of sales. The important thing is they know the models, or at least they have, it's in here. They might not have it in their head, but they know the models. They know the go-to-market motions. They know the data model in which it needs to be. And usually they're the person asking the question based on whatever model they're using. And they are helping prioritize initiatives and spend. So our role as RevOps is we want to know this so well. We can communicate where we want to go, and we can start influencing the prioritization of initiatives and spend. That is revenue operations source influence. That's the end of this session. I'll look forward to having questions and breaks. Stay awesome. Keep doing it big, and adios.